Welcome to What's in Your Pocket, a heartful conversation about money. It's your host, Marcus. Today I'm going to cover the concept of whether or not you're a natural saver or spender. And this will bleed into a lot of the other things that I'm going to talk about on this podcast. But this is the very beginning. As I discussed in the intro to this podcast, understanding yourself is the critical component of being good with money. But more so, it's about being good in life. If you understand your personality, your strengths, and your weaknesses, you now have a foundation to move forward with a plan, right? You know yourself, you know your goals, and now you can fabricate a path and a strategy to get you there. But one of the biggest things that I would begin with myself in the area of money is to understand whether or not I'm a natural saver or a natural spender. Now, some of us are going to be like, oh yeah, I know exactly what I am. But I think there's a little bit more to it than that. So in this podcast, I'm going to cover some things that you can do to better understand yourself and your relationship with money, in particular, your emotional relationship with money. And what I mean by that is, do you get enjoyment out of spending money? Do you find spending money to be a joyful experience? Now that might be counterintuitive, and you're going to be like, absolutely not. Like, why would anyone enjoy spending money? But when it comes to buying new things, is that what gets you enjoyment? Is purchasing things the enjoyment you get out of having money? Do you enjoy the new cars? Do you enjoy buying clothes? Do you enjoy expensive vacations? Is the attitude of spending money what you enjoy about it? Whereas a saver would look at $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 in the bank account, and that is their purchasing of security. Right? Natural savers have this desire to accumulate money for most likely security reasons. Oftentimes, people who grew up poor want to see their bank account increase more so than having nice things. It can go both ways. But in general, people who grew up poor want to see that money is protecting them from life. They want to have that barrier there. But a natural spender enjoys the process of spending money, enjoys what it can get them, whether that's, new items, new shopping. However your allocation of spending money is, that's the enjoyment you get out of having money. Whereas as a saver, you just want to see the bank account increase and you want to see things grow, whether that's your investments or your bank account. So that's the first indication is what is your relationship with money? What brings you enjoyment out of having money? The second thing is the actual point of sale, right? At the point of spending that money, is there emotional pain? Do you feel an emotional loss when you swipe that card? And this is a big factor, I think, at least for myself and how I tend to understand money in relationship to me, is at the point of sale, regardless of whether I know this purchase is wise, I have some pain associated with that purchase, regardless of whether it's a justified purchase. Right? I hate spending money on things that don't bring me value. Even when I spend money on things that bring me value, there's some emotional pain at the point of sale inserting that card. Because I'm always in the back of my mind whether or not the purchase is worth the amount of money I'm being charged. It's a legitimate question. And I always find myself in some sort of pain. And so I've come to realize through that, in large aspect, that I'm a natural saver. Now, I know a lot of Christians out there are going to bring up the argument whether or not it's moral. One of these is moral or less moral than the other, and that's simply not true. Right? Having an inclination to spend money also means that you don't have an emotional attachment to money, which means you can give more money than a saver can. Right? Emotionally. A person who's not attached to money not only spends money on things they enjoy, but they are also willing to donate more. They're willing to give more. They're willing to be more active in giving their money to other people because it's not as painful as them to separate themselves from their money. Whereas a saver would have a more of a offset approach, kind of back burner approach to giving money. This isn't always the case, but oftentimes so. Right? So for me, I've had to readjust my brain in thinking about giving as an investment in myself. I get humbled. I experience a joy that money can't bring. In giving money, I am in turn receiving something more valuable than money. But in the immediate, it's very painful for me. And this isn't something to be ashamed of or to think of yourself as immoral or not someone who's, or you're materialistic or anything, but it's a component to understanding money that I think is important. And until you recognize that about yourself, you can't create a plan fabricated to yourself to achieve your desires, right? If the accumulation of money is your simple end goal, you're most likely a saver, right? Whereas the luxury lifestyle is more likely a spender. So understanding this about yourself is important for important for three reasons. One, you begin a foundation. You know where you're starting from. Your launch point into your financial plan is known, right? If you're a natural spender, you earn money to spend money. That's the very black and white relationship. So you have to create barriers for yourself to plan, invest, and to give. So when you do that, you are allocating your merits to certain spaces, not just the accumulation of material things. You start buying things that, one, increase your money in the case of investments. You give, which gives you perspective. And you plan, which mitigates the emotional capacity for you to spend. And it's important to do that. Unless you're mitigating your desire to spend, you can outspend any income. So it's important to plan. Whereas in a saver, right, if you are planning, you know your natural inclinations are to save and accumulate money. So if we're saving, we can be saving for investing, natural. We could be saving for the accumulation of cash, that's normal. But when we start accumulating money to give away, when we start making purchases that are more important than the accumulation of money, whether that's investing in our education, investing in others, investing in businesses that your friends are starting, whether it's simply giving away money, whether it's buying things that should have been fixed a long time ago. If we learn to detach ourselves from the accumulation of money, it's a healthy thing for us to do as savers. I've had to learn that certain purchases are worth it, they're good, there's nothing immoral about them, and that it's healthy to do so. And this has been a critical learning curve for me. And so moving forward in these two cases, we now have a foundational understanding of who we are in our relationship with money. So what do we do moving forward? As a spender, we have to create systems that allow us to save, that allow us to not spend everything that we earn, and to plan for the future. So how do we do this? Well, one is the most annoying part of personal finance, budgeting. Everyone hates this. Nobody enjoys doing this, but it's important. And I'm going to do a whole episode on budgeting, but I want to briefly talk about it here. I recommend doing what's called a zero-based budget. And what that means is every bit of money that you are going to earn is spent on paper before you earn it. And what I mean by this is, let's just say, for the sake of math, that you earn $1,000 a week and you're paid weekly. You allocate $4,000 a month in expenses, saving goals, investing, and giving before it comes in. Meaning every dollar down to the zero is spent in those categories. Because there's only really three things you can do with money. You can save, you can spend, and you can give. And investing is in the savings. But so those three things are the only things that you can do with money. So allocate them to those things. Your savings and investing goals. Allocate a certain amount of money to that. Allocate them to expenses, needs, wants, and desires. And then allocate a certain number of giving. And I'll explain why in later episodes, why giving is so important. So you allocate all of that money before you earn it. And if some emergency happens and you need to spend more money in a certain area, you adjust that so it always equals zero. There's no money left over. This is where you are telling your money where to go. You're spending it before you have it. And this allows you to gain control over your money and understand where it's going and how much you're spending in each category. This allows you to control your spending, add to your investing, and give you a certain amount of money per month to give, to enjoy. The giving of money is an extremely joyful process. It's the most fun you'll ever have with money. when you give just $10 to someone who really needs it, that $10 means more to them than $100 would mean to you. So there's a certain joy in a spiritual, psychological, emotional feeling that giving gives to you and the person receiving that gift than no other form of money or use of money can ever meet. It's truly phenomenal how much you enjoy giving when you start to do it. In the beginning, it's going to be a little painful, but as it goes on, it truly changes the way you think about money and how you think about yourself and how you think about the world. And as a saver, the same thing applies, but in different aspects, right? You need to allocate more money to things that are pressing, right? You need to spend money on things that are important, but you also need to spend money to enjoy it, right? You can enjoy the money that you earned. You earned it. There's nothing wrong in enjoying the amount of money that you've earned to an extent. And so when we're approaching this and we're trying to decide, how much to spend, how much money to give, how much to save, I like to use ratios because then they can be applied to any amount of income. Now, you can adjust these ratios to however you see fit, but I highly recommend having ratios to some degree, and I'll give you kind of a basis. I think no more than 50% of your money should be used for needs and wants. And what I mean by this is all of your expenses, your car. Now, this is true later in life, and I understand that as a young person, it can be difficult to do this. But as you start getting a stable income and you're out of college, this is how I would do it. Okay? No more than 50% of your income should be going to needs and wants. And what I mean by this is your mortgage should not be more than 25% of your take-home pay. Your car and all other expenses should not equal more than 25% of your income, your take-home pay per month. And why this is important is it gives you leeway to save and invest. Now, the critical part of this is to understand that you need to then plan your expenses to be lower than 50% of your income. That means you need to do your research on the car that you're going to buy. And I'll do a whole episode on how to purchase a car and how to save money on a car and the best types of cars to buy at a given age. But for the basics, you need a car that's reliable. A car takes you from A to B. And especially early on in your financial journey, investing is critically important because it can double your amount of retirement money by starting 10 years earlier. So keep your car really low. It shouldn't be that expensive to have your car, right? You should not have a car payment out of college. You shouldn't. You should be buying a $4,000 to $5,000 car, reliable, paid off in 1 year. It's just the way of life, and it's just how you begin. I mean, if you're driving a Toyota Camry for 10 years, that alone, that one decision can guarantee your retirement. So living on a good amount of car, good, reliable, cheap, affordable to fix and maintain, that type of car is critical to your financial future. It's important for us to understand that decisions related to money are the very differences between retiring rich and retiring broke. So having that plan where none of your income, not more than 50% of your income, is spent on expenses and wants is important, but that takes strategy, that takes planning, and I think everyone can do it. If you're in college, it's tough. It's very tough, but it's doable. If you're living on campus, maybe you don't need a car. You save on insurance, save on the car, save on gas. Walk places. It's okay. You can do it. You have legs. Right? And the second part is 10% of your take-home pay should be given away. Now, I know that some people consider tithing to be an old-fashioned thing. But even if you're not Christian and you don't believe in that ethic, giving every month to some charity of your choice, or to some person, some single mother, some struggling college student, it puts your mind in perspective. It changes your view and your relationship with money, but it also changes your view and relationship with other people. You gain perspective. You understand that the world doesn't evolve around you, and it keeps you humble, focused, intentional with how you live your life. Now, I would recommend, with the other 35%, this can be allocated to, I would say 15% should be given to saving and investing. Right? This should really be the first component, right? You should be saving and investing all the time, right? You really need to get on this, especially if you're young. 10 years can double everything you have in retirement. Double. Think about it. Let's just say that you get $1.5 million in retirement if you started at 28 years old. If you had started at 18, you could have $3.54 million with the same interest rate over the time period. It's unbelievable what starting young means. The rule of 72, where you take the interest rate that you want to earn and divide it by 72, and that'll give you a rough estimate of how many years it will take for your money to double. So if you're earning a 10% interest rate, it'll take you about 7.2 years to double your money. But think about that. Double your money. So it's important to get started. It's important to invest. Now, you don't need to be a financial guru to do this, but you do need to be consistent in doing it. And the remaining 20% can be allocated to do more things, whether that's building a college fund for your children, saving up for a new car, like intentional saving goals for certain things, or more giving or more spending, vacations, right? That extra 20% of your income can be used to do things that you enjoy with money, to guilt-free do it, right? But it needs to be intentional. And, if you have that extra 20%, allocate it to something that, you have intentional goals. Always have goals, always have plans, always have things that you're working towards. And use that extra 20% to move and kind of shift those things around to eventually get to where you want. So it's important for you guys to have this plan. If that using those ratios works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, you need to adjust them. If you want to save 20%, spend 60%, and then you have 20% for giving an extra once. That's you. But have ratios. Plan for the future. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about, in especially in the area of savers, is credit cards scare the living crap out of me. I'm afraid of them. I'm paranoid about credit cards because the interest rates are so high. Right, and this is kind of going back to earlier what I was saying, where you have an unhealthy level of attachment to money. Is I check all the credit cards that I have, the balances every day. Right, I make sure that there's zero chance of me missing a payment. Because to me, credit cards are good for one thing. I don't really care about the extra protection they give you. There's some debate whether or not that's even true, but I don't care about the cashback. I don't care about the benefits. I don't care about the miles, all of those things. My one use and my one intention with credit cards is to build my credit score for a mortgage and for investment properties and real estate. That's it. That is my one-dimensional view of credit cards. And so protecting that FICO score is important to me, because it will cost me a lot of money down the road when I go for that mortgage or when I go for those investment properties. Now, what that means is that I would say, a good approach to credit cards. Because I'm never going to miss a payment, hopefully. I understand that the reason the credit card is the most marketed product in America is the consumer loses. It's the only way that they would do that. And so I protect myself from myself with credit cards, and I'm very intentional about paying them back on time. Yes, it does create a little extra worry for me, but I also understand that it's an investment of sorts. Now, I only use a credit card on expenses that I would have spent already. And what I mean by that is I use it when I'm purchasing gas or when I'm purchasing groceries. If I'm purchasing travel or if I'm using hotels, things that I would have already spent money on. I don't use a credit card for restaurants. I don't use a credit card for online shopping because statistically people are most likely going to spend 50 to 100 times more using a credit card than when they do a debit card. So understanding this, I have allocated the use of credit cards to a very specific set amount of types and categories of spending. This protects me from the overuse of credit and the statistical probability of spending more with credit. So I save money. And I win in the area of my FICO score. Right? Spenders are more likely to have a problem with this. Right? Because credit cards have a bunch, they have cash back and benefits and all of these other things and miles and all of that. And if you don't do that, if you don't do what I do in the area of setting categories where you'll use your credit card in already predetermined expenses, you're going to end up spending far, far, far more. 1.5 to 2 times the amount of money you would have spent on a debit card. And this is bad because in one, it most likely will land you in the statistical average of 6,000 plus in credit card debt, but also it hurts your FICO score, which is the only reason you have a credit card. A credit card, in a very black and white view, they give you money so that you can borrow more money, so that you can borrow more money, right? My argument to using a credit card with a high level for the average person, now if you're talking about business, that's another thing, is you have to protect yourself from yourself in the area of credit. And especially if you're a natural spender, this is going to be a critical component to your financial success. Is set those categories, right? You have to buy food, so buy it with credit. But I wouldn't recommend in any probability to having a credit card with more than $5,000 balance. It's not necessary, right? Now, I understand the whole concept of, if you have more credit and you're good with it, but here's my point, right? Is if you're doing this and you're having a higher unlimited credit card, you are just subjugating yourself to a lifetime of pain and suffering, and it's not worth it, right? It is for one intention only, in my opinion, and this is just my view of credit cards, but I think it's a healthy one because I'm never going to be in credit card debt, or at least I hope not. But my understanding and my view of credit cards is very, very specific and narrow. And so when I have, 3 to 5 lines of credit, I rotate them in and out so they're all active. But I'm not spending hardly anything on credit other than my absolute needs. So in a very broad spectrum, I would say spend with credit on your needs, spend debit on your wants. Because now you're having to physically turn over cash for your wants, and now there's an emotional and physical, psychological attachment to cash that credit does not have. And that's why people are spending 1.5 to 2 times the amount using credit. So that's my 2 cents on the area of credit. So just protect yourself from the credit card companies and what they're trying to promote, and categorize your expenses. Protect yourself from yourself. And my last thing is, there's no secret formula to developing good saving habits. It's a painful process to limit yourself, especially as an adult. And especially if you grew up without a lot, right? Because it hurts to be broke, right? It hurts to not have money. And so spending can be an emotional compensation for pain. And that's not wise spending, and that's not a healthy approach to solving past trauma. So understanding yourself and where you're coming from in your relationship with money is a very wise approach to personal finance. Use ratios on how to save, give, and invest, and spend, but also understand credit cards, their usefulness, and your intentions with them, and learn to protect yourself from yourself so that you can live, grow, and retire with unbelievable amounts of money. It's all up to you. Now, a quick word from our sponsor, Anchor. Thank you, Anchor, for sponsoring this video. If you're interested in creating your own podcast, then Anchor is your best spot. Anchor allows you to create, edit, and record all of your podcasts in one spot and publish to Spotify and numerous other platforms. It's free to use. Go to anchor.fm for more information. Thank you, Anchor, for sponsoring this video. If we're going to develop good money habits, it all starts with you. It starts with understanding yourself and setting boundaries for yourself, right? I have a very conservative view of credit cards, and I know that, right? And I know it might not be for everybody, and that there are arguments that other ways or other views of credit card is good or better, but I also understand that credit cards can be a financial weakness for me. So I have set up a plan to protect myself from that. So in order for you to do the same thing, you have to start by understanding who you are, your relationship with money, and how you're going to handle it. And in doing that, and doing it with excellence, is the only way that you can retire with money. It just is. This world is not forgiving in this area. Like, don't think Social Security is going to protect you. This is the real world, people, where broke old people eat ramen noodles. Right? This is a process that's based upon you. The quality of your life in retirement is based upon you and your actions today. Change. Like, reimagine the life that you could have if you do financial things right. This is your host, Marcus, and this is What's in Your Pocket, a heartfelt conversation about money, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace out.